All right, at 7:30 p.m., we're going to begin this regular meeting of the Rutherford Board of Education, April 24th, 2023. We're going to ask everyone who can to please stand, face the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed,
Here.
Mr. Bogosian,
Here.
Mr. Conti,
Present.
Mr. Healy,
Here.
Mrs. Jones,
Present.
Mr. Mazzone,
Here.
Dr. Racine,
Here.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Present.
Dr. Olati.
Here.
You have a quorum.
The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meeting of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Rutherford Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place posted on the bulletin board outside the Borough Clerk's office, mailed to the Herald, South Bergenite, and the Record newspapers, and filed with the Borough Clerk. Hard copies of the agenda are available in the meeting room, and the agenda is posted electronically on Friday before the meeting date on the district's website at www.rutherfordschools.org. Subsequent to the meeting, a video of the meeting will be uploaded to the district's website, www.rutherfordschools.org. The video link can be found by opening the Board of Education link and clicking on Public Meetings and then Videos. So board members, in your packets, there are two sets of minutes to approve: the regular meeting and executive session of April 3rd, 2023. Anyone have any questions or comments about those? All right, hearing none, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to please enter those. We are going to move on to our special presentation. We're excited to welcome Mr. Robert Marone to discuss the audit report to us, as this is the meeting where we get to do that. So with that, we'll hand it over to you.
Okay. Great. Thank you. You can hear me fine, I guess? Good? All right, super. Well, thanks again for allowing me to be here in attendance. Over the last several years, we've talked about the delay in the issuing of the audit report. Again, it's nothing that is in our control. It was all state-driven. The pension information has been constantly delayed, as well as some on-behalf information. So there are some on-behalf items that the state does pay for you that we have to put in, and that information's in your report, as well as some information related to benefits. And that's really what has held up the audit reports in the last several years. We're hoping that this will change, and next year, the actual due date of the report is in December. It's December 5th. Here we are almost May. The report was filed within the deadline by March 17th. So all along the state has allowed these extensions, but unfortunately there's just extensions for everything anymore. And in our field, I think somebody once said that you don't even have a deadline anymore, but we really do have deadlines, and we like to get back to those. But nothing has really changed as far as the way the reports are being issued. You still have your large book, that's your annual comprehensive financial report, that's the ACFR. And then we have what's also the report to management that the state gets as well. So that has some additional information in it. The report that basically over the last several years, due to COVID and some additional funding that the district gets, there's been an increase in the amount of what we call single audits due to either the stabilization grant or the American Rescue Plan funds. And now that you're getting some debt service aid from the state, there's just some additional testing we had to do because of that. So this has resulted in a lot of districts having some extra single audits that we also had to do. In your larger report, there's the budgetary section, which starts with Exhibit C1. And as you're going to be talking tonight about your budget, that's really what a lot of your focus is on, is your budget and where it stands. So Exhibit C1 tells you where you are with the ending amount of fund balance and what you're going to need to utilize in this year's budget that's statutorily required, and also based on what was in your 22-23 2023 budget, that amount is also being reported on that Exhibit C1. This audit was the last year where your fund balance was allowed to be utilized up to 4% for your unrestricted fund balance. It's going back, and I guess that's something that you've dealt with also in this year's budget that you've been going through. So that's pretty much where the report is. We had to do something additional this year due to a new release called GASB number 87 with leases. Luckily, you didn't have much that needed to be, in fact, you didn't have any restatements, which was good. A lot of districts had to restate the way they were handling leases. Now, it's just a terminology change, and that's called financed purchases. So your capital leases that you had before are now considered financed purchases. Again, at the end of the 22 fiscal year, again, I told you about Exhibit C1 is where you're going to find that information. Your capital reserve is also included there, and also in footnote 3. And this was the first full year of your before and after program through June of 22. And lastly, there were no findings in the report, which was great. And I want to thank Joe and his staff for all the cooperation. We seem to move pretty quickly with our staff and the information that we're asking for. We can be a pain by disrupting business a lot, but we try to keep it at a minimum. So with that, I'll entertain any questions that you may have. Yes.
We get an A+?
Oh, that's a tough thing. An A+.
Okay, we're one of your better districts?
Yes.
Okay.
How's that?
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Everything flows through. And one of the reasons why it's one of the better districts is because of the food service fund. We don't have a lot of the testing to do that a lot of other districts do because of your jointure program that you have that has helped out. But you still have the food service fund. So, and you take corrective action. We just talked about that prior to the meeting real quickly. You know, when you had the situation a couple of years ago, that was handled very quickly. So, with the enterprise fund.
Any other questions from board members? Hearing none, Mr. Morone, it's always a pleasure to see you,
Yes, thank
especially
you
under
again.
circumstances of a clean audit. Great to see you in person.
Yes.
I know up until last year, it
Yes.
was Zoom for a couple of years, and just want to share your appreciation and congratulate Mr. Kelly and Mr. Hurley and what it takes for there to be a clean audit. And just your management and oversight of budget work. So congratulations to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morone.
Thank you, Bob.
All right. So we'll move on to our next item, which is the public hearing of the 2023-2024 budget. Just as a reminder, on April 3rd, we had a meeting where the board got to review with Mr. Kelly the budget that was being March 13th?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, March 13th. We reviewed the budget that was being proposed to be sent to the state. The board at that time approved the budget that would be sent to the state for review. Tonight, after the public hearing, we will be voting to approve the 2023-2024 budget. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Kelly for his presentation.
Thank you very much. As I sent an email out to the board last week or the week before to say that the budget was submitted on a timely basis on March 20th. The county office has several weeks to review it themselves. They did review it. They made no changes, so they've approved it. So this is exactly what you approved before. For the sake of a public hearing, we're going to go through this PowerPoint, but you've seen everything here before. This is a bit shorter than the last one, but we'll just run through this pretty quickly. Tax levy for next year. As you know, there's a 2% tax levy cap, so we have applied that. Our base for the year is this year's tax levy, which is a little over $45 million. So we get about 90 to 95% of our budget comes from the local taxpayers. 2% cap on top of that is $900,000. As you know, the state also allows certain upward adjustments to the tax levy based on extenuating circumstances. In our case, it's our health benefits anticipated for next year, 23-24. We are in the state health benefits plan, so the state manages the plan. They have told us to expect double-digit increase next year. So we have a 13% increase budgeted. We had a 15.6% in this year's budget, and that is one of those allowable adjustments because it's something above and beyond what a 2% budget cap, a tax levy cap, could otherwise provide for. So that comes to about $700,000. That's a 1.6% in addition to the 2%. And a little bit of good news here is our debt service is down about 1.9%. That's strictly contractual. That's based on our payment obligations for those principal and interest payments for next year. So it's a net increase to the tax levy of about 3.2%. Just to go a little bit more about the allowable adjustments, this is a result of the School Funding Reform Act of 2008, which was effective for fiscal year 2009. So we've been looking at this for the last 14 years. This mandated a 2% cap on annual tax levy increases plus certain allowable adjustments, if applicable. Health benefits premium, as I just mentioned, that's the one we're taking advantage of. The other three are just examples. They don't apply to us this year, so we don't have any adjustment because of those. That's the enrollment increases. Responsibility shifted to or from another entity. I'm not even sure when that would apply, or deferred pension contribution. The 2% cap is somewhat supportable in times of low inflation like it was back in 2009. We're not in those times now, so it's just not sufficient for our needs. I should mention too, the School Funding Reform Act, that was all tied into the original changes to the election process. Remember, we used to vote, go out to the public every year in April to vote to approve the budget or not, as well as to appoint new board members as needed. Well, that was then made optional. So if you kept to the 2% cap as provided here by the School Funding Reform Act of 2008, then you could just move your board member elections to November, and the board could approve the budget without the public input. So that's what we're, without the public approval, that is. Of course, we want the public input. So it's all tied up. Those two things are all tied up together. In building this year's budget, as I mentioned, the health insurance premiums, we had a 15.6% increase this year. We're anticipating 13% for next year, hoping for a whole lot less. This comes after several years whose state had a premium decrease, which in my opinion is not justifiable. They could never justify that, but now they have to make up for it. Bus transportation, we had a 35% increase this year. And you know, that's not just us. We do all this busing is through the South Bergen jointure, but statewide, nationwide, transportation costs have gone through the roof for the past year. Salaries, staffing, equipment, all of it has increased dramatically. Salaries, we had a 3% increase built in, and that's through the negotiation, the collective bargaining negotiations from a year and a half ago now. So that's already, that's carved in stone. And other insurances like property and casualty, workers' comp are up 15%. That's just $65,000 right off the top as well. So those are just some of the things, the big drivers in building the budget. Not a lot of changes in our staffing. Have 3 or 4 retirements. Last year, remember, we had about 11. So it's pretty stable in that regard, which makes it easier to budget. It doesn't make it any prettier, but it is easier to budget. State aid, we talked about this as well. We have, for this year, we have $2.9 million. The state is providing a 7.7% increase, which is $223,000. Brings us up to 3.148 for 23-24. I'm going to show you the next one. I know you've seen this slide every year. This is the history of state aid. even though we're looking at a 7.7% increase, if you look at the gray line running through the middle of this chart here, that's the percent of state aid of our budget, of our operating budget. We're still at that 6%. We've been in that 6% since, that looks like probably about 12 years ago, since right after the School Funding Reform Act and the changes to the election rules and all of that. So a 7.7% increase is fine, is nice, it's appreciated, but it's really not a big bump compared to our budget and the escalation of costs in general. Personnel, like I said, we had a couple of 3 or 4 staff members who are retiring next year. That gave us about $100,000 in breakage. So that's we're higher paid employees who are retiring, and then we'll end up replacing them with lower paid, newer employees. So that's the savings that we can build into the budget. We continue to look at teacher assistants, and that's an ongoing thing throughout the year based on needs.
If I can, just as a point of on the staffing, if you saw that we need to add 2 special education teachers, so essentially the $100,000 in breakage is short on those 2 teachers. And as I mentioned several times, the market that we're in now, I'm very happy to report, and we do have a personnel committee next week, that we're doing we're a pretty good place. We're hiring folks. There's several tonight for approval. I'm in a very tough market with a shortage of teachers and very competitive market. But that also means we're not bringing people in sometimes as low as in the past, because we're in a very competitive market right now. So last year, we benefited from, as Mr. Kelly said, 11 or 12 retirees, and that helped with the budget. This year, adding the 2 new positions with a limited amount of breakage and the higher starting salaries that we need to attract people, we're not really gaining anything there.
The other big driver in the budget for next year is our facilities needs. We're planning to use up to $3 million of our capital reserve. These are funds we've been able to set aside year after year for capital projects. We put that to good use over the years, and every year we use some of it, and we try and bank a little bit more. This has nothing to do with the tax levy. This is the capital reserve that we've been saving up, so that's a separate source of funds, if you will. The big one is the field renovation. That's this field right out here. We've got an estimate of $2.3 million. That is just an estimate. We still have nothing to back that up. We talked about that on March 13th. We've had a surveyor in who started to work, and he's putting together a report right now. So we're hoping to finally get some movement on that. But that was the upper bound of the range that one of the field contractors had suggested. So it's in the budget. If for some reason we don't do it, it goes right back in the capital reserve. No harm, no foul. But if we want to do it this year, or if we want to get started on it this year, it has to be reflected in the budget, which it is. On a much smaller scale, though, at the high school, in the 230 gym, we have a window system, wood floor, and plumbing upgrade. We had some issues there last year. We're looking to get that taken care of. Roof replacement at Union School. That's the Springfield Avenue wing. This is a series of roofing projects we have over there. If you remember, last summer we did the roof closest to Belford Avenue. This is the Springfield Avenue side. There have been ongoing leaking issues in that part of the building. Washington School, we have an AV audio visual system replacement in the multi-purpose room. Partial wood floor replacement. This is some damage that was done from Hurricane Ida, which is now about 1.5 years ago. We got some temporary fix done on that at the time, but this will be more of a permanent fix. Looking for a pickup truck and a plumbing snake for the maintenance department, and then our annual SDA assessment, which the same number, same treatment every single year.
Again, as we talked about capital reserve, I want to make sure, again, that point is understood, that this is money that is placed there at the end of the year when there's money that we haven't spent, with the idea of how to do our capital projects. And that's how we fund capital projects. They don't come out of the tax levy for this year. I also want to make a quick comment regarding the field, which again I think has been a subject of a lot of discussion over the last maybe 12, 15 years of the need to replace it. I was doing a little file cleaning out, and in 2018, I believe it was, or maybe it was 17, prior to the first referendum that failed, that did have the field in it, we did we had a committee of parents, students, board members, teachers, administrators, and that committee did about a year's worth of work of laying the groundwork for what should go into the referendum, and did a survey that we had. I think we had 447 parents or staff or students who responded to the survey, and the survey listed every possible item in every building that could be covered by a referendum. The only one that scored high importance and low, very low, across all those groups in the high school was the field. And across the district, there was only about 5 or 6 that scored low. Things like high class size in Pierpont scored low, and inadequate lunch facility or gym facility in Pierpont and Union. So, when we look at the field, it has been a subject of discussion going back to when I was principal, well before. And the community ranked it as one of the highest needs and lowest quality when we did that survey in 2017. So, the commitment that we made in capital reserve was try to get to the point where we think we can get it done. So that's where we're at.
So to be specific on the field, we're looking at turf installation, irrigation, new fencing, and repairs to the retaining wall. And that'll be the big question mark. Once we rip out what's there, we'll see what the retaining wall really looks like from the inside. But that's what we're looking to do at this point in time. As I noted here, the Buildings and Grounds Committee will be brought in for extensive conversation, make sure everybody's comfortable with this before it even goes to the board. So there'll be plenty of time to discuss this. Right now, we just don't have the information we need to have that discussion.
Right, and again, to add some, vendors, they're moving very, very slowly. But it kind of makes me chuckle that, you go to somebody and say, hey, I got $2 million I'm willing to spend, and they move slowly. I would move pretty quick for that. However, the reality is anybody who wants to get a turf field done wants to get it done in June, July, and August. So it's ready for the fall, and it's ready for the school year. So I'm sure, they've been moving, but not at a pace we'd like them to move, because I'm sure they're pretty busy. But we have had meetings, as Mr. Kelly said. We had the surveyor out here, and we're being told that we're going to get a more detailed breakdown within a week or two. I'm hoping in time for Building and Grounds. If we don't have it, though, we still have enough to discuss, not only about the field, but about other things at that meeting.
I think we touched on most of these points. It's an estimate only, the $2.3 million capital reserve funds, as opposed to the tax levy that we talked about earlier. The project must be included in the budget, and if the board does not approve the plans when they're ready, the funds will be returned to capital reserve and used for some other purpose, or try again, or whatever.
Right.
But
or if the
it's
board,
a board decision.
right, or if the board approves it, but the vendor moves slow, we can't get it done, right? And because keep in mind that's a teaching station as well. This is not just a practice field or a field for the community use. It's where anytime the weather warrants it, our phys ed classes are out there. One of the things in the high school that's a little different than the other schools is, first of all, phys ed is a 5-day-a-week course, but you also have to work in things like, it's kind of a matrix of kids who have science labs and so on and so forth. So you have some phys ed classes that have 50, 60 kids in it. And that field allows a teaching station where 20 or 30 could be in the gym and 20 or 30 run the field. So we can't very well have the school year with that ripped up. So, we might all say, the plans are great, the money's great, well, let's go and do it. And if we can't do it, the money goes back to capital reserve, and we got to get it into next year's budget and just delay it. So, functionality and aesthetic for the way the building's improved, I would love to get it done this summer. But if it doesn't work, we'll figure out how to get it done. The other thing we don't know from them, how much time is it going to take? Because we haven't had that kind of discussion yet. Maybe there is a period during the year that we can do it and live without the fields for a while. So we still have a lot of unknowns, is what I'm saying. The one thing we know is that it really needs to get done.
Was there a question?
He answered it. Last part. Yeah, psychic.
No, you know what? They put an antenna in my head. That's right.
These were the next steps we talked about last time, though.
I just want to know, when you did the survey and it was ranked lowest on the poll to fix the little field out here,
Yeah.
was it just for the high school, by the high school parents? or did
No,
you
it was,
have elementary
well,
teachers on
no, it was community. And again, the field's not just used by high school parents, I mean, but everybody was given the opportunity to answer anything they wanted to answer. There is a breakdown in the survey. I didn't go that deep back into it. It's like a 50-page report. I didn't go back in that deep now. I went into it very deep back in 2017. But there is a breakdown of how many people answered each question. I mean, some people chose not to answer things they didn't have knowledge of.
Okay, and this is the if you remember this from March 13th, this is the next steps. Obviously, we're at the last step here tonight. We'll be looking for board approval of the budget. This is the final approval. And once that's received, if it's hopefully tonight, then we'll go live. And we'll start ordering and we'll start preparing for the new year. But that's where we stand. Any
And one thing I do want to add before there's any questions that you want to ask. We don't talk about this part of the budget at these hearings, but it's not just the line item for money. What goes into the county and state for review is descriptors and justification for every line item. And they give you, what's the number of characters, Joe, for 4,000 characters for each line item that you have to, not words, but characters. And you need to show how you're hitting every standard education, how everything is connected to the educational standards. And that's another process that Joe in his office and Ms. Fargo in my office have to work on, and I get to oversee, but they're the ones who get their hands dirty with it. And the state does question. They'll come back and say, we need a little more information about this or that to show the justification. So it's not that putting the numerical, the accounting budget together is simple, but it's not as simple as that. There's also a lot of detail, research, narrative that have to go into it. So we're always pleased when we have one or two questions from the county that are easily answered and not any serious pushback.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Hurley. Wanted to start by thanking Mr. Kelly and Mr. Hurley for really doing a thorough job of putting together a budget that you thought made sense for the coming school year. These are obviously complex budgets to put together. And I wanted to thank the Finance Committee as well for all the time and diligence you took to really review the budget, to ask the questions, in particular to our Finance Committee Chair, Mr. Bogosian, who took the time after the Finance Committee meeting to reach out to each board member not on the Finance Committee meeting to make sure that they really understood the what and the why of the budget. So two quick points I wanted to make was that the allowable adjustment that, we are approving was really in an effort to make sure that we're not cutting personnel or programs and those things aren't impacted. And we all agreed that from a value standpoint, that was really important. And the second thing is, just to clarify so that everyone in the public knows, we are not voting tonight on whether or not we are funding the Rutherford High School field renovation. We are voting tonight on this budget, which proposes that we move $2.3 million from our capital reserve into our operating budget, so that if the board at some point in this fiscal year decides they want to renovate the fields, that we have that money available to us. And in one of those last slides, it mentions that there is additional information that the district is currently seeking. So just wanted to clarify those pieces. Questions from the board? Mr. Conti?
Yeah, I'm assuming that the PowerPoint's going to be on the website along with the video so the public can look at this PowerPoint as well.
Yeah, we could assume that, right, Mr. Met, right? And in fact, you pick it up sometimes off the camera, but if we send you the PowerPoint, you could also insert it in, right? So maybe, Mr. Kelly, you could send him a copy of the PowerPoint.
Great. I mean, there's just a lot. The only reason why I ask that is it's sometimes if you're in the back here, it's difficult to see up there. But there's some really great information. You guys do an amazing job presenting it, and seeing like the history of the state aid and cost per pupil and things like that. I think goes a long way to explaining a lot of this to a lot of people. So having that available to them I think is great.
Thank you.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yeah, as you said, I'd like to extend my thanks to the Finance Committee, certainly to the administrator, to the superintendent. I know that having been on both buildings and grounds and finance, this is not an easy task to pull together, especially not with interest rates as they are, health insurance and transportation expenses. I certainly would not like to see our district ever come to a place where we need to contemplate program or staff loss. That's not where we want to be. To echo Chris's point, on what we're doing with capital reserve, I actually again applaud the Finance Committee and Joe, your decision making around this, because in addition to the field, all those other items that are outlined there, for those in the audience who don't know, we bracket things in buckets A, B, and C. And many times we never get below what's in the A category. And when I look at those items, I'm thinking about roofs and flooring and, HVAC systems. Those are things that we have to keep our district running and operational. And it's just a small portion of our budget every year goes to those OTPS type expenses. So, I think it's a very good job under very difficult financial times. So I appreciate the effort. Thank you.
Yeah, and to echo what you said, Mr. Mazzone, you're correct. I mean, a lot of times I think people don't know. I'm sure, sometimes if you're even on the Finance Committee, you may not know, or the Building and Grounds Committee, where, we start back in probably October, November, when the Director of Building and Grounds comes up with his list. He meets with every principal, talks about what their needs are. We then sit, Mr. Kelly, primarily Mr. Kelly and Mr. Gamboa, sit, but I also join in the meeting and the discussion, and we review what the principals have told us, and we come up with, as Mr. Mazzone said, the A, the B, and the C, and in order of importance. And then, of course, that doesn't mean anything, right, until we start seeing things like what the state aid's going to be and what the tax levy is, and do we have any allowable adjustment and so on. And we can start looking at what can we put into our maintenance budget, what do we have to keep under capital reserve, what has to get postponed perhaps to next year. So it's a 6-month process. If it was a magic wand that we could get everything done, nothing on the list isn't needed. Those items that are C are still important, but things like you said that make it to the top are the ones that are the ones that really are critical. So there is a lot of work that goes in on Mr. Kelly's side, the administrators in the building, Mr. Gamboa, the board, 2 different committees, right? Finance and Building and Grounds are both really involved in that discussion of the needs for the building.
Mr. Haley?
I guess it's more of a question. Is it fair to say that there's a couple of items that kind of partially offset the impact of the allowable adjustments, right? Meaning the increased state aid and the retirements, just as an observation, is that fair to say? Otherwise the impact would be worse, right? So.
Without the allowable adjustment,
no, I meant the others offset.
Oh, the others offset. Without, we're every nickel is accounted for.
As a positive, correct.
Right. And one of the things, to Mr. Mazzone's point about not cutting staff, I'm very, I'm very pleased to say that with the board and with Mr. Kelly and with the administration, we really have not cut staff. Sometimes we've eliminated a position where there wasn't a need anymore for that position, but we then replace that position with another staff. And we've added many programs, as you know, over the years, because that's what makes our district a good district. You know, that we could be a comprehensive school that offers a lot of programs to kids. You know, when you start looking at building budgets, I think the highest building budget is probably the high school, maybe $700,000 for supplies and things like that. You know, and the lowest is the smaller schools are probably in the upper $100,000, and that's supplies for the year. When you look at $49 million, that's nickel and dimes. So if you have to make cuts, it's not cutting index cards or wiffle ball bats. It's cutting staff. And when you cut staff, it's not that you're cutting just staff, you're cutting programs. And so that's something that I'm very happy and proud and with the board and the community and the administrators, we've been able to figure out a way to not only keep staff, but to move forward, because that's critical to, I think, the success for our kids.
Mr. Sprayberry.
So, Jack, quick question. When have we ever used the additional aid in the past since that bill was passed in 2008?
Since I've been superintendent, I think we've had it 6 out of the 9 years, and we've used it every year. Because again, the state, keep in mind that the 2% came under Governor Christie's watch, who, you know, I don't think there's anything negative to say, was a very fiscally conservative governor, right? And made some cuts, I think, at the time. You know, many of them in hindsight, many were needed, and did some things that were needed at the time, made some tough decisions. You know, that 2% though is, you know, it's hard to live by. So, you know, the Funding Act isn't very generous in the amount they give you. When they tell you you can get a little extra dollars, they're telling you because there's a real need and you're a district. So we've never not taken it, because the position we'd be in by not taking it is we're short money. I mean, there are no big ads. There are no ads really at all, except for those 2 teaching positions in this budget. It truly is a maintenance budget. I mean, yeah, you could say the field's an ad, but no, it's a repair of a facility, right? So there isn't like we're adding new stuff here. We're maintaining, and we need every nickel and dime.
Ms. Jones, and then Dr. Racine.
The 2 special ed teachers, they're not replacements, they're additional.
They're new positions. You know, we brought students back into district, again, 8 or 9 years ago, which again, I think was a wonderful thing to do for the students. And also tonight we talk about the budget, right? For the budget. You know, the cost of a teacher is going to be between, well, we put, you know, benefits and things in, say, $100,000. You know, that's a tuition or more, you know, and that doesn't even count the busing and everything else. So it was both a great benefit for the students and a great benefit to the budget. However, you know, the goal wasn't to bring kids back with the staff that we had and then say, oh, you get to middle school now, we don't have a teacher, now we're going to put you out. I mean, that would have been a horrific thing to do, right? So, you know, we do have to sometimes add staff because we managed to keep students in the district, and as the program grows, we need to add staff.
So it's going to Union or it's going to Pierpont? Teacher.
One's at Union, and the other is at Pierpont, I believe, yes.
I think so.
Thank you.
Dr. Racine.
Yeah, I just want to echo everything and to thank Joe and Jack for all you've done. I know people don't see what happened on the teams, where Joe, you have some pretty creative methods to save us a lot of money from in a good way. Yeah. From the different kind of leases we get to the auction for our energy bills, right? And then, yes, we did get an increase in state aid of $200,000, but then insurance went up $1.2 million. So without all of those little savings that you scramble to find, we would be in worse shape. And just to add, not only did we not cut any programs in the past couple of years, we've added programs. Some of them actually brought in some money too. So with all that, just to balance all that and to not only keep us whole, but then grow us is a good testament.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none. All right, so then we are going to move on to the report of the superintendent. Turn it over to you, Mr. Hurley.
Thank you. Now I'll talk about something. I will mention money once. Okay. You've all been informed that we have our distinguished graduate selected. It's a class of 2009. Rami Youssef will be this year's distinguished graduate. For those of you who aren't familiar with Rami, I'll just give a really quick, for the people maybe here in the audience or watching later. Rami graduated, like I said, in 2009. He won the Golden Globe for Best Performer of an Actor in a Television Series, musical or comedy, and was nominated for 2 Emmys, one for his acting and one for his directing, because he was the creator and the director and the lead in that series. Titled Rami, that was on Hulu. Is in his 3rd season now. He also was given a Peabody Award for excellence in storytelling. His comedy special on HBO was nominated for a Critics' Choice Award and a Writers Guild Award. He is a co-creator of a new animated series that is going to be on, I believe, Netflix. And he also is going to be in a feature film coming up later this year with Emma Stone and William Dafoe and Mark Ruffalo called Poor Things. And keeping in mind that Rami's probably 30, 31 years old. So that's quite a resume to accomplish in a period of time. I mean, my daughter's graduated a year before him. I read all his accomplishments. I said to my daughter, what the heck have you been doing? No, I'm only kidding. She's doing great. I'm only kidding. And having Rami when I was principal here, just well-deserved and always was a very creative and energetic and personality. I do want to mention, though, the Distinguished Graduate Award. We started in 1990. It used to be every year, and now it's every other year. And there's a list that you see. If you ever get the chance to really go look at some of the things and go a little deeper, like, we have a graduate who's a United ambassador to the UN, congressman, missionaries, someone who worked on the Hubble satellite program. And the list of what they do, doesn't really go that deep into it. Like, Peggy Noonan, it says writer. Many of you probably know Peggy Noonan, political commentator. She was a writer. Yeah, she wrote for President Reagan and President Bush. The 1,000 Points of Lights, whether you like it or not, she wrote that. The Challenger speech, right, was the Challenger, right, with President Reagan, not touched by the hand of God, she wrote that. And she sat right up in this building. And part of so it's really an impressive list of people, musicians and educators and entrepreneurs. And the beauty of the program is, it's not just we give them an award. They have to earn their award. They come back, depending on their field. They meet with a class or a small group of students who are interested. So, for example, Rami will meet with our theater students and do a little seminar and work with them for an hour or 2 in the morning. Then we do a full school or as many students as we can fit into the auditorium assembly, where it gives a little talk about how he was in this building and how he developed his career path. And then there's a luncheon that we honor him with during the lunch. And having been here for all of these, since it started, the assembly is and the seminar, for lack of a better word, is so well received by students because it allows them to see the potential that's there, the opportunity that's there in so many different fields. So anyway, it's May 12th. If any of you, I know the board received an invitation. If any of you, are planning on going, please let Mrs. Garrity know, and in the administrators, in the principal's office, and secretary to Mr. Morales. But it'll be it's always a great day, I also want to congratulate Dr. Valechko. She received a Practicing Leader Award from Montclair State. She's getting it this week. One of several administrators who were honored with that. So congratulations to her. The Parent Academy that we've talked about has some interesting programs coming up. You can look on the website. It's there. But there's going to be on May 3rd, there's going to be one in the evening before the PTA meeting at Pierpont about raising strong and empowered daughters. There's going to be one in the morning of May 3rd at Washington on resilience and independence, building that in students. That's a second part of a program that was presented earlier in the year. On May 5th in the morning at Lincoln School, there's something about a little explanation of what gifted and talented really means and what that program is about. And then something, a series of dates at Pierpont Kindergarten Center, Lincoln and Washington, the end of the month, where there'll be invitation for parents who are new to elementary school that, are having children in that grade level for the first time, if they like to come to a meeting. So anyway, you can find that online for the Parent Academy. The rodeo, the bike rodeo, that's been part of, I guess, right, Dr. Racine, the Green Club is involved in that? Green Team. And money comes from BCB Bank. Money comes from the Elks Club. Money comes a little bit from the borough. And we also had a community member made a donation this year. And they come to the schools, Washington, Lincoln. They teach kids bike safety. And for the kids who don't know how to ride, they teach them how to ride. So the dates on that, I'll give them to you later, but it's June 7th and 8th at Washington and 13th, 14th, and 15th at Lincoln. And it's always a fun event for the kids. And the kids who know how to ride really get some good safety tips. And it's really neat to see the kids who can't ride yet. By the end of the day, they're riding. So it's a good activity. We get a lot of community involvement there. Police show up and EMT folks, and they come and help out with it. One year they got me on the bike to ride, and I have a picture of it, which means I never have to do that again. I just show the picture. You also heard about our end of the year celebration for the retirees and the Teacher of the Years and the Distinguished Service and the celebration. If you're interested in going to that, just please get your RSVP into Mr. Siegenthaler in my office. Committee meetings next Monday night, 7:15. We'll meet via Google Meet with personnel, and 7:45 with Building and Grounds, also by Google Meet. And I'll send out the invitations for the Google Meet and the agendas by the end of the week, as we normally do. And a policy. I know we don't have anything right now. We do have some policies that I'm just finishing reviewing. So probably in the next day or two, I'll get it out to the committee for your review. And hopefully, if we need to meet, we will. And if we can just do it as we've been doing it via email, we can start to move those at the next meeting in May. And last but not least, we are in the spring, as I've said, and Dr. Eladia said, a lot of activities around in all the schools. I've given you dates; they're on the calendar. A lot of things aren't even on the dates, like the athletic programs and all that. So if you get a chance to come out and see any of it, we're certainly always happy to see you. That is my report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hurley. Questions from board members? Ms. Ahmed.
Day for the end of year party again?
June 8th, is it?
Thursday, June 8th, at the Great Cliff.
Thank you.
Other questions?
One other thing, can I tell you?
Yep, Ms.
With
Ahmed.
Rami Youssef, he used to come here quite often for the meetings.
Mhm.
And he would sit there with his friend and be very, intelligent questions. And when he wanted something, he would put it forth. But he was like another member in the board for a while.
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned, Robbie's friends. He's worked still with a lot of the guys
Is he still
from
there?
high school that are involved in some were in the show, some worked behind the scenes on the show. He really, it's like I said, well-deserved award.
All right, thank you. Ms. Jones.
He was also one of our board reps.
Rob,
He's a board rep.
he was?
That's where he got all his training. Speaking in front of people.
He had us laughing all the time.
He probably was.
Well, yeah.
I know he was.
Real quick on. Well, I'm just saying. Well, I don't know. She's saying he's not. You're saying it is. I'm trying to mediate this.
He wasn't elected, but he was here
but-
in the audience every time.
But Rami, when graduation comes, I meet with the valedictorian when I was principal. And I meet with the senior class president, and I go over, what should be kind of the tone of the speech, and go home, write the speech, and then come back and let me see the speech, and then we're going to listen to the speech. You're going to practice it, because I also, I've been around teenagers a long time. I'm not just saying, get up and say whatever you want at graduation. So Rami gets up as class president, and he has a speech in his hand, and he says, Mr. Hurley worked with me on the speech to make sure it was going to be exactly what everybody would want to hear, and this is what I'm doing with the speech. And he rips it up, and he throws it up in the air. I mean, he read the exact speech we worked on, but it's just, again, he was always a showman,
Yeah, he was wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, he is wonderful.
Any other comments or questions from Mr. Hurley? All right, hearing none, then we'll move on to the report of the president. Start by thanking Mr. Hurley for continuing to put in his memo the reminder of events coming up. One of our board goals is, continuing to enhance our community relations. There's no better way to do that than to be amongst the community. So whether it's plays, shows, athletic events, and whatnot, please try to do your best to attend those. A lot of you have children in some of the schools. And next, wanted to give a reminder, this is the time of year where we start the Chief School Administrator Evaluation, CSA evaluation. So thank you to Mr. Mugosian, who's going to again make on Google Form the evaluation available to us to complete. As you know, by process, the way it works is that evaluation gets put in, and then Mr. Hurley has to write a narrative about his meeting of the goals that were set out for the school year, his evaluation of that. Once that's complete, we'll open it up to everyone to fill that out. And then I'll basically be synthesizing all of the data together to put together a report that's shared with Mr. Hurley and the board, and that needs to take place at one of our June meetings. So I'll follow up once Mr. Hurley's in the next coming days completed that portion of the evaluation, so that we can have deadlines for completing that. And I appreciate, once again, every year we have full participation from all the board. I think it's really important. Evaluations are how we grow, continue to evolve. So thank you for that in advance. Just a reminder that the Rutherford Education Foundation wine tastings this Saturday, April 29th. For those of you who are interested in going, purchase your tickets now. You can purchase them up until, well, I'll say the day before the event, although if you wanted one the day of the event, it might be able to happen. I'm still on the REF, so if you're interested in tickets, you can talk to me. Dr. Racine's wife's on the REF, so you can talk to him. But they do so much for all the grants that they raise every year. So I think it's a great effort to try to be a part of. Finally, just wanted to share some professional development that's out there with the New Jersey School Boards Association that looked interesting. There were 4 things that came up. One is a conference called Calming the Waters of Turbulent Seas. So it's a conference designed to help board members and district leaders develop and improve communication and relationships with their stakeholders, and provides insights on governance. It's a great opportunity for learning, for collaboration, also networking. There is a webinar that's actually not in person. It's on May 18th. It's called Protecting Our Future, Strategies for Improving Cybersecurity and Achieving Cyber Resilience. So it addresses the rising cyber threats, and insights about how schools can secure their districts and achieve cyber resilience. June 2nd, there's an annual school public relations programs meeting, and that's really about learning strategies and skills to build trust and respect with the community at large, press, parents, in our role as board members. And then finally, there is a conference on June 9th on school security and safety. And that's really about experts who come in cybersecurity, threat assessments, school security and safety best practices, and they share all those things with us as an educational opportunity. So that's it for my report. Any questions from board members? All right, hearing none. At 8:24 p.m., we're going to open the meeting to the public for any items related to the agenda. Any comments from the public? No? All right, hearing none, we're going to close the meeting at 8:24 p.m. And we are going to move on to new business where there's action to be taken. And we are going to start with personnel. Mrs. Ahmed.
I'm going to try very hard to compress this guy, so hang in there. Shannon Finnegan is the replacement position for hire. Approved also number 2. Daniel Mikolowicz as a lead replacement. 3, transfer Lori Catalano. 4, employee 1744, disability with pay. 5, employee 1985, disability with pay. 6, job description, revised job description for the network system administrator and IT manager. 7, service providers for following services for Judith Leonard and Lindsay Richmond. 8, substitute teachers for approval, Elizabeth Garcia and Nancy Blasquez. 9, substitute teacher assistants following Nancy Blasquez. 10, travel reimbursements for Danica Schmedding, yeah. 11, board granted 6 days, approval for employee 2490. 12, cyber agreement between Rutherford Board of Ed and Rutherford Education Association. 13, Jasmine Avilas, accept her resignation. 14, elementary co-curricular to rescind the assignments and stipends for Paula Rizzoli and Jay Wagenbaum. 15, elementary co-curricular, and that's assignment for Paula Rizzoli. And 16, Jacob Redenberger as an intern, to prove as an interim site director for Bulldog Care.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Ahmed. Mr. Early, you want to talk us through a couple of these?
I want to remind the board of the sidebar agreement that's made with the REA regarding when an employee who meets certain criteria in the sidebar agreement, which I believe you got a copy of, needs sick days. So resolution number 11 by the sidebar is asking the board to grant additional sick days, which the board does not do and really can't do. So for number 11, to provide these days, you vote no for that. And then resolution 12 is to enforce the sidebar agreement, which allows REA members to donate days. So you would vote yes for that. So obviously you could vote whatever way you want to vote, but if you want the days to go to the individual that needs them, it's a no for 11, it's a yes for 12. Okay? And that's all that I have.
All right, questions or comments from board members? Dr. Racine?
A question on the job description. What changed? Wasn't highlighted.
Well, one is it used to be college preferred, now is college required. Also, as you know, we've met with IT. The scope of their work has expanded greatly. So just the stuff that wasn't there 10 years ago when we did the first description has been added.
Okay, so it's matching up with reality.
To match up with reality, right.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll ask Mrs. Ahmed to move those.
Yes, with the board's permission, I'd like to ask them to move 1 through 16.
All right, do we have a second? Mr. Conti, any last questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed?
11 is no, and all the rest, yes.
Mr. Bogosian?
No on 11, yes on all others.
Mr. Conti?
No on 11 and yes on the rest.
Mr. Healy?
Yes, no on 11, and yes on all the other items.
Thank you. Mrs. Jones?
No on 11 and yes on every other one.
Mr. Mazzone?
No to item 11, yes on all others.
Dr. Racine?
Yes to everything except 11, or to vote no.
Thank you. Mr. Sprayberry?
No on 11, yes on the rest.
Thank you. Dr. Alati?
No on item 11, yes to all the others.
Motion's carried except for number 11.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on now to curriculum and instruction. Ms. Jones.
Thank you. We did not have a CNI meeting, and tonight there are 12 resolutions recommended by the superintendent. Number 1 is out-of-district placements. Number 2 is field trips, now totaling 142. Number 3 is NJSIA, that is for summer practice and a recess period. Resolutions 4 through 11 are all harassment, intimidation, and bullying decisions. And resolution 12 is an overnight trip for the spring track state group meet taking place on June 9th and 10th. And that's it.
All right, thank you, Ms. Jones. Questions or comments from board members? Mr. Conti?
Just out of curiosity, why isn't 12, why do we vote separate? Why is there a separate vote on 12? Why wouldn't that be rolled into part of the field trip?
Overnight trips need special board approval.
Got it. Thank you.
And also on that one, like we've done with other sports, they may or may not qualify to go to the meet.
Totally
But
understand.
we need to approve it in case they do.
Yeah. That makes total sense. Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Hearing none? Ms. Jones, would you like to move this?
Resolutions 1 through 12 under curriculum and instruction.
All right, we have a second. Mr. Healy, any last questions or comments? Hearing none, Mr. Kelly, please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed?
1 through 11, and yes on 12. Is that how you want?
Yes on everything?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Bogosian?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry?
Yes.
Dr. Owati?
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on now to finance. Mr. Bogosian.
We did not have a finance committee meeting since our last full board meeting. Tonight we're looking at 9 motions. Number 1 is the routine approval of bills. Number 2 is the monthly treasurer's report. Number 3 is budget transfers that were included in our packet. Number 4 is to accept the 2021-22 audit. Number 5 is the approval of the 23-24 budget as presented. 6 is our food services agreement with Carlstadt East and East Rutherford. 7 is to approve the architect of record. 8 is our municipal advisor. And 9 is to accept with gratitude a donation from Young Sung Kong and Kyung Jae Bak toward Pierpont School activities.
All right, thank you. Questions or comments from board members? Hearing none, you want to move those?
I'd like to move motions 1 through 9.
All right, do we have a second? Mr. Mazzone, any last questions or comments? Hearing none, Mr. Kelly, please take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Yes.
Mr. Bogosian?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry?
Yes.
Dr. Owati?
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll move on now to policy. Mr. Healy, anything
Yes,
for us?
We did not have a committee meeting since our last board meeting, and there are no resolutions for this evening.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move on now to buildings and grounds. Mr. Sprayberry.
Good evening. I have nothing to report, no meeting and no movements,
No change orders? Nothing? What? Really? It's the first-
You know, construction is winding down, right? I mean, no change orders, no, nothing. Unbelievable.
We still love you, James.
Oh, you saw that long list up there. You'll be needed.
All right, then we will move on to old business. Any old business? Mr. Sprayberry?
I attended the Rutherford High School PTA meeting last week, and want to give a nice round of applause to Dr. Hopkins, who presented about college and having a freshman and stuff. And I know there's a lot of guys here with high school kids and kids that gone through it. She just did a phenomenal job, and the people that showed up, the questions, and the talking back and forth. Jack, maybe you could tell the new system that they're moving to really was eye-opening for a lot of the parents and stuff, and the way they're involved in it, with down to scholarships, down to the schools they apply to, the acceptance and everything else, and the way it helps them out. And it felt reassuring from a board member standpoint that the resources are there for these kids throughout that entire process and the parents. So it was just another thing that, we sitting there and listening to it on a personal level and as a board member, that it just really, it was great to hear. And then I went home and asked JP, I said, does BT have anything of that nature? And he's like, no. I'm like, which I'm sure they do. So, but no, it was a really good meeting, and there was a lot of community involvement. Parents showed up too, and a lot of great questions around it.
I'll share that with her.
I shared that with her that night as we walked out, gave
Yeah.
her, good praise and stuff, but, yeah, so.
Yeah, she does a outstanding job.
Thank you. I think Ms. Jones had her hand up, and then Mr. Conti.
I also attended the Washington School PTA meeting, that was for PTAs. We just mentioned that Jenna Gussover was Teacher of the Year. She teaches at both Lincoln and Washington. And Scooterville was on, and they had the PTA build new buildings for it. That's a wonderful activity. The other thing is the track team on the 18th. James Aletti, who was first in the hurdles, broke his own record, and Poppy came from behind on the 4x200 and 4x400. I mean, she was fabulous. So much distance she had to make up. She runs the fourth leg. She's phenomenal. She really is. So those were really two good things. I also went to PopCert, which is the first time I've ever gone to that, and I had such a good time. I had no idea that parents and adults went. I thought that was strictly a program for kids. So I was enlightened with that.
You missed me twice. I did Elvis. I dressed up as Elvis with the white Vegas Elvis, and I performed.
I beg your pardon?
And then once I was Tony Orlando.
Oh, I am so sorry.
And I had 3. If you come to my office, you'll see a picture of as me as
We'll
Elvis
have
up
to
there.
look for that. Thank you very much.
Right. And one of a teacher who's no longer here. She retired. Not that she's no longer here. When I was over and I went back, I took off and my costume. She said, whoever that was sounded just like you. And I said, that's because it was me. But yeah, so you should have been there. I would have hit. I was a hit.
I'm sorry. And you were Santa Claus at one point too, aren't you?
What?
Weren't you Santa Claus?
About 22 years in a row. Yeah.
You were, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know that either because parents can't go to that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Glad
I have quite a resume.
Very good.
Mrs. Claus is always welcome.
Well, yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Conti.
Yeah, so Saturday I attended the boys' high school lacrosse team game down at Tryon. Unfortunately, they didn't win. It was a close game, though. But one of the things I found really interesting there was the amount of kids I saw from other grades, from first grade all the way up to 8th grade and beyond, down there watching the game, which was really, really, really just fantastic to see. The other thing that I didn't realize this, and I got a chance to talk while I was down there, I saw Sherry Ann Horenko, who is the coach of the girls lacrosse team. I was unaware of this, and that's why I'm bringing it up. The girls lacrosse team is 7-0 right now.
Undefeated. They're great.
Undefeated. Absolutely amazing.
I had a very nice article in one of the high school sports pod things. Yeah. Second year of existence. 7-0.
Yeah.
Losing most of the games last year. That's a real turnaround.
It's unbelievable. So just
This is only the second season for them.
Second season for the girls, third for the boys, and the girls to be undefeated. And they're playing. They're playing. They have a tough one this week. They're playing. A schedule that is almost like you do in the Premier League and soccer. We're not trying to get them buried, but you still got to go and win the games. And to win every game undefeated, the confidence that builds. She's got a lot of young kids on the team, so it's really amazing for a second-year program to be doing that.
yeah, that was just fantastic to hear that. So definitely going to try to make an effort to get down there and see them.
And again, it goes back to the budget conversation we had with, adding programs,
Yep.
Providing these kids an opportunity.
Yep. Well, and I saw them practicing right before the board meeting here on our lovely field.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Enlighten me, please. The girls wear goggles, the boys wear helmets.
Yeah.
that's correct.
Now,
Girls' rules are different. There's not as much contact.
Yeah.
Boys actually wear like shoulder pads and helmets, and
so they have
but
arms.
there's not the same kind of checking and hitting and.
I don't know. When I was in high school and played, whenever the boys' team played the girls' team would always kick our butts. So they were definitely much better skill set with the girls' team for sure.
Did they wear more equipment? too?
No.
No.
It's a more finesse game, and it's really impressive.
Yeah, one of my daughters played lacrosse in high school, and my brother actually played it like 1,000 years ago. We were two kids from Jersey City who didn't even know what lacrosse was, and he went out to Hofstra, which was a very big time lacrosse program. ranked top 10 at the time nationally. His roommate was from Baltimore, which is a huge lacrosse area. He got him into playing a little bit. He decided to play it. He wound up, they were so good with having an A team, B team, C team. And by the time he was a senior, he moved up to the A team and traveled a little bit. But and I didn't know. He came home and said, I'm playing lacrosse. I mean, all we knew in Jersey City was, basketball and, stickball. We didn't know lacrosse. So once again, see, I'm really this Elvis lacrosse. I'm really a Renaissance man.
Just amazing. And you played
Mr.
soccer
Bazan?
in college, right?
What? Yes, I did play soccer. So this is turning into a testimonial.
I just wanted to give a plug for Union School. Friday night is Legally Blonde.
That's
It's 7 p.m. and then it gets 4 p.m. on Saturday.
Right.
So, yeah. And then the only other comment I had, and I don't know if the school is doing it or necessarily, but I see all the commitments are coming out. I have a high school senior, I think most of you know, and seeing where our kids are all going on to, it's really impressive to see, all these graduating seniors all over the United States. These kids are going, and I think it's why we're here. So
Yeah,
really impressive.
and at some point we have usually at the award ceremony they have a list of acceptances, and it is remarkable, and the acceptances are even more remarkable sometimes than where they decide to go, because sometimes maybe it's financial reason they can't go to a certain school, or the distance of the school, or they just don't feel they fit in there. But the acceptances are always extremely impressive.
It's good stuff.
Is the senior awards on Friday the 2nd of
Yes.
June? Down at Memorial Field
Yes,
again?
again, yep.
So we can walk down and watch that. Are they writing their names on that big board in by the
I don't know.
guidance now?
I don't know.
Max do that?
That's
They
up
write
to
their
me.
names, what
I've been
colors they're
advised.
going?
You could ask Mr. Morano about that.
Okay. Well, I won't either. Max won't know. Thank you.
Ms. Jones mentioned my son runs track and field and has been doing that for a couple of years. And this year I've been trying to make a concerted effort to go to games. And I was away this past week on an international trip with my 8th grade. I get home Friday night at almost midnight. The alarm goes off at 6 a.m. that my wife has, and it's like, oh, there must be a track meet. Great. So I go to the track meet, and one of the things that really stood out to me is there's so many different track events and so many different field events. And the way these students, if there was one Rutherford student in a race or in any type of event, they really rally and come over and cheer each other on. It's wonderful to see the sense of community amongst all the students and athletes. Any other comments under old business? Hearing none, we'll move on to legislative update. Ms. Jones.
One, because we had 8 HIVs, there was one Senate Bill 3715 introduced by Shirley Turner, a Democrat, and Jean Stanford, a Republican, and the accompanying bill is Assembly Bill 5346 for Democrats. This is to broaden the definition of harassment and intimidation and bullying in the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights Act. I can't read the whole thing, it's way too long, but what the bill amends the definition of harassment, intimidation, or bullying in the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights Act to encompass acts of harassment, intimidation, or bullying against all students, not just students in protected classes. As currently defined, the HIV is required to be reasonably perceived as being motivated by an actual or perceived characteristic. The definition sets forth an example of such characteristics as race, color, religion, ancestry, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, mental, physical, or sensory ability, or other distinguishing characteristic. The bill eliminates the requirement that the conduct is motivated by these actual or perceived characteristics from the definition. So I don't know how long that's going to take and whether it will amount to a whole lot, but there is areas where the superintendent would have to know. But it's
I'm not sure where it's at yet in the process of
it's just
moving
been
along.
introduced on 323, so it's only 25% through.
Right. And again, just in terms of that, I mean, I haven't read it, so I really can't comment on it. There's again the misconception, I think, that harassment, intimidation, bullying was that law was created in response to harassment and intimidation and bullying of people in a protected class, and it was created to provide a little more focus and influence there. when something happens to a student who's not in a protected class, the code of conduct that every school must have covers it. There's a little bit of reporting difference, there's a little bit difference of a paper trail, but there's still a paper trail with the other. So I think, you know, it would be good if before they act, and they may not even act, and some of these things never see the light of day, you know, they get introduced, but I always feel it would be good if they could talk to people who actually have to live with it and enforce it, because we would be reporting on maybe 15 or 20 HIBs that really aren't HIBs, they're just kids being kids. You know, the law was specifically designed to provide more protection to people who needed it. But again, I haven't read it, so I could be totally wrong about what I just said, but based on your comment.
All right. Thank you very much. Don't know whether this falls under old business or not, but it's always a pleasure when we have any members of the council or mayor here. So I want to thank Mrs. Del Rey Cohn for coming tonight to be here. And at 8:46 p.m., we're going to open the meeting now to the public for any items related or not related to the agenda. Hearing none, we're going to close the meeting at 8:46 p.m. There is a need for an executive session regarding a student matter.
And we'll say a contractual.
And a contractual matter. We should be out for about 15 minutes or so.
15 minutes.
No action to be taken. Need a motion to go into executive session. Mr. Bogosian, seconded by Mr. Mazzone. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are in executive session. Thank you.